From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour was made in a courtroom, or a county clerk's office, or a crime scene, or on death row in another state, or at a press conference in this state, or certainly at the Jazz Festival. Gary Craig is a journalist who has covered what seems like everything. The headline of his recent farewell column was Chicken House Fires, Mobsters, Politics. It's been a fun ride. Gary will not like to hear me say this, but he truly is a legendary journalist. He is the best of his kind. He's generous to colleagues, always. He somehow picked up accolades without picking up an ego. He is human with biases of his own, but you don't see those biases creep into his work. And now he heads for retirement. Friday is his last official day in the newspaper business, and as he notes, it's the first day of the Jazz Festival. Good timing. Gary writes that his decades as a journalist have provided a job that is fulfilling for someone with natural curiosity. And he adds, quote, "Personally, I don't know how anyone gets through life without curiosity," end quote. And then he writes this. "I've been in more prisons than I care to remember, have written extensively of when the criminal justice system got it right or got it wrong, have covered the advent of crime-fighting technologies, some later proven to be less than reliable, and have seen the system whipsaw between policies driven more by political whims than research-based data. I've encountered people who think police can do no wrong or police can do no right, and have found both camps terribly mistaken," end quote. We are losing a great one with Gary's retirement, but at least we get to spend the hour with him here on Connections when really he should be at work. He's working till Friday, and he has a lot to do. Welcome back to the program, sir.
Thanks, Evan. I always enjoy being here, so this is an honor. Thanks for having me here.
What you do, you're not done yet. We were talking before. I thought you were cruising to the finish line, and you said you've got like weeks worth of stuff to write in 3 days.
Yeah, and none of them are easy. They're somewhat sensitive stories, all of them, and several are done, several are nearly done. But I don't know how I did this. I really don't know why I allowed myself to fall into this hole, but I did.
And you're supposed to be going to Jazz Fest on Friday night. You better get it all done.
I'll be there. I'll be there. Yeah, I may after Jazz Fest go back and write. But I'll be.
Well, that feels
there.
familiar.
Yes, it does.
You've done that before. Yeah. And if anybody who's watching on our YouTube channel, on the WXXI News YouTube channel, I was telling Gary, this is the best dressed I've ever seen a Democrat and Chronicle journalist. Did you dress up for us?
Well, no, but I was in court earlier today, and so if you want the complete true newspaper reporter story, I then went and had a slice of pizza, got it on my tie, and stripped the tie off. And
so I was just amazed you're wearing a coat.
I was worried. Oh God, I can't drop pizza on the next layer. This is what I've got to wear to the show today. So,
You look like you're dressed for a wedding.
Yes.
So in your early days, you write in your piece some things I did not know about you. First of all, where did you grow up, Gary Craig?
Outside of Winston-Salem.
Outside of Winston-Salem.
Yes.
And you created an underground newspaper in high school?
I went to a military school in Virginia for my junior and senior year, and I don't recall specifically. There was some issue. Seniors were having some senior privileges revoked for something they'd done, and I was a junior, and I figured, what the heck, I'll take up the fight for them. And so I put out an underground newspaper that as I was mentioning earlier, I misspelled privileges throughout. And so you always remember those things. It's like, it's not whether the writing was good beyond that. It's like I misspelled privileges, and it probably was in there 20 times in the newspaper, but yeah, it still stuck with me.
And I mean, I hate to be cliche, but by that point, did you know you wanted to be a journalist?
I knew I wanted to write. I mean, I started writing early. I was like a monster movie fan who was writing horror stories when I was probably 7 or 8. And it's funny, the sort of evolution, I guess, how I got here. So I wanted to write. I did journalism in college. I was co-editor of our college newspaper my junior year, and just too much work to do in my senior year. And then I was coming out, and I knew was I going to write the great American novel? No. And even if I was to try to write books or magazine coming out, I really liked a steady paycheck, as bad as it was. Mm-hmm. And so I'd done journalism in high school. I jumped into it in college, and town, Farmville, Virginia, which has a fascinating and ugly racial history, and started there. And what I found, partly there, but more in my paper in Northern Virginia, where I really stepped into more of an investigative role, is how much I love the reporting part of it. It got to the point where I do like to write. I've always thought I could, truly actually thought my writing could be better than it is, because I focus so much on the reporting that I have a hard time pulling myself away. I love interviews. I love documents. I love court records. I mean, back in the old days, I had it. I would go to bed with a stack of the old GAO blue books when they put those things out from every possible environment, traffic, crime, and I would have those on my nightstand. It's a pretty boring adult, obviously. That's my nighttime reading. But I just fell into loving the reporting part of it as much as the writing part. And sort of later in my career, I said, I need to focus more on my writing. So really the last however many years tried to improve on that.
What was the paper in Farmville, Virginia?
It's the Farmville Herald. Prince Edward County is the only county in the country post Brown v. Board. Especially in the South, a lot of places set up all-white private academies. Prince Edward County shut down. They stopped funding public schools completely. I mean, the other places funded them minimally, and that's the only place in the country. So for 5 years between 1959 and 1964, this was not immediately after Brown v. Board because there's some other court cases later, that the South was still fighting. Black children were being taught in church basements at their homes and stuff. And a friend of mine, I should remember. I feel bad that I don't have the book's title at my tongue, right tip of my tongue. But the fellow who was, we were colleagues at Farmville. He stayed and became editor. Shepherded him. I'm proud to know this guy and have him as a friend. Ken Woodley. I highly recommend looking up his book, A True Case of Racial Reparations, where he was able to get years later the Virginia legislature. I mean, there's obviously people, this was decades later, but those who could still wanted it, were school age at that time and wanted to do something with education. The state legislature set aside millions for that effort. And Ken Woodley, he was at our wedding, and he was the editor. After I left, we were the two news reporters at the Farmville Herald, and I'm just always proud of the work he did there.
Is the Farmville Herald still there?
It is. Yeah. I mean, every other newspaper I've been at between now and then is dead. The Potomac News.
You were kind of blaming yourself, but the Farmville
Herald is still alive.
Still there.
Yes. So that I guess I should hold on to that thread of hope. Yes.
Every great newspaper reporter I know has a real affection, not just for the craft of journalism, but for the value of smaller communities having print.
Yes.
And I just want to read a little bit from your farewell column about some of the color here. You write, I covered the birth of twin calves and a chicken house fire within the course of a few days, almost 45 years ago. I did not know beforehand how unusual was the first, nor how malodorous was the second. How much do you remember about that chicken house fire?
I can still remember the odor. It was bad. It was not like KFC or something. It was, or maybe it was. I don't know. But so, I'm sorry. Hope that's you don't have to worry about KFC as a sponsor.
KFC's not going to sue you. They're not going to sue you. They'll sue us.
Okay. And it was. And actually, when I wrote that, last week, I had to go back and it's been a long time. I remember hearing that this was very rare and looking it up, but I haven't looked in 40 plus years. So I went online to Google. Twin calves birth is actually unusual and rare, and that was my life then. Yeah.
Well, but that's still. I mean, we kind of can muse about it, but smaller communities. Most of them are not like Farmville. They've lost their locals, lost region. A lot of them are kind of these news deserts now. How much does that worry you?
Oh, it worries me a lot. Especially the communities as you say, like Farmville and others, the sort of those that really rely on the newspaper, or at least some semblance of a newspaper, to learn what's going on around them, what their government's doing, what their schools are doing, what's happening in their high school sports. I mean, yes, you can get it online, but it's so. I don't know. There's just this sort of fragmentation now when you're looking for stuff online, and maybe this is the old guy speaking, that it's just not as easy as picking up a newspaper that's got everything in it. Not everything, but a good portion of what you want to know. And there's just something to that. I was at an event with Chris Wadarsky, the historian locally, and talking to her about sort of in the future. I mean, now, we can go back to the microfilm or the microfiche or the DNC or the TU from 30, 40, 50 years ago, and see everything is happening at the town boards. I mean, where is that singular place going to be to look for that, decades from now?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly like to position the show as a kind of town square, but
exactly.
But print reporting in those dailies, I mean, 1988 I think was the peak of newspaper circulation in this country, and if you go back and read Calvin and Hobbes, which my son is now doing,
I love Calvin Hobbes.
His mother always complains that all she wants is a cup of coffee and a newspaper, and the journalist in me is like, oh, the nostalgia.
Exactly.
Just this young mother who just wants a good newspaper. and for her child to leave her alone for 5 minutes so she can read the paper.
Yes.
Times have changed.
No, that's just such, I still get the Times in print, and, Sunday, just sitting down with the New York Times is just a wonderful time still.
So we're talking to Gary Craig, the reporter who is going to retire on Friday. After how many years at the Democrat and Chronicle?
Well, I started at the TU in 1990.
So 35 years ago, you get to Rochester. You went to the Times Union.
Yeah, which was, then the evening paper. They consolidated the staffs in 92, and then the TU was shut down in 97.
So 35, 33 years, whatever.
Exactly.
3.5 decades in Rochester. You write in your piece, my first beat was City Hall and its mayor, the late Tom Ryan, a man completely incapable of telling a lie. I'd like to say that is the norm in political sectors, but oh well.
Tom Ryan put me in the hospital.
Excuse me?
Yes, because of his inability to answer my question and my bad health at the time. So this is...
Wait a second. He was unable to tell a lie.
Yeah. Well, but so that he wouldn't answer your question if he had to lie, but he couldn't answer the question. So I knew I was asking the right question.
Do you remember what the question was?
Oh, yeah. Is he resigning and retiring as mayor? He'd been mayor both appointed and elected for 20 plus years. And in 1992, because the big primary was actually early 93. That's when the big primary when Bill Johnson won and all. I got the tip on a Friday that Tom, who after years of him being retired, I finally got accustomed to calling him Tom because we would still talk. It was hard, but he's always mayor to me. Was going to announce on the Monday his that he was stepping down, and I knew that was going to open the floodgates as it did. So I tried that. I was already very sick with an awful cold. I went to Tom Ryan, the old days where you just walk in and knock on the door and the mayor lets you in. I mean, it's sort of hard to imagine that. And he wouldn't answer my question, so I knew he was. And then I spent the day trying to I didn't eat anything. All I did was drink caffeine all day long. Got home, was still continuing to try. I maybe had a light dinner. Next thing I know, I have a vasovagal episode and I'm passed out at the house. Then the next thing I know, I'm in the ambulance to St. Mary's. And so, first time ever and it never happened again.
Did you tell the mayor this?
Oh, he called me at the hospital. Yeah, I told him it was his fault because I was in ICU because there was a test then. It's a weird thing called the tilt table. I don't know if it's what they still do, where they tilt you basically almost upside down to see if it was a vasovagal episode. And we couldn't get one. I was at St. Mary's, the old St. Mary's, and we couldn't get to Strong, which is where it was, till like Wednesday or Tuesday. And this was a Friday. So he called me on a Monday after, of course, he'd made the announcement. And I said, well, thanks, and no thanks. You could have told me Friday. This would have been a lot easier.
Did you appreciate a mayor who wouldn't tell a lie?
Oh, I did. Completely. Yeah, no, yeah. I have. He was an interesting guy. I don't know how many Tom Ryan stories you've heard, but people who know him, he had this funny way. He was not articulate. His nickname was Mumbles. He was not articulate. And so he did not like public speaking, but he would call you and then be silent when you picked up the phone. And it's like, and then you finally realize it's Mayor Ryan, and you finally go, because it's like a 10-second pause or 15 seconds. Like, now you'd think it was a spam, you'd hang up. But with Tom Ryan, I eventually figure out after like 5 or 6 times it's the mayor's calling for some reason, usually because he had a beef. But that was about it. But he actually post-retirement became a great source for sending me in the right direction for things he'd heard about. So,
talking to Gary Craig, who's retiring on Friday, I want to read a little bit from what my colleague Veronica Volk sent me. Now, first of all...
This is going to be hard.
First of all, she says the following. She wants to say to Gary. She says, here's the thing about Gary Craig. When we met back in 2015 during an episode of Connections, he was already a legend in the community. He'd been embedded in journalism and all things Rochester for years. Meanwhile, I was new to town, new to the job, and incredibly green. He was better than me at just about everything. The research, the interviewing, the writing, and by the end of Finding Tammy Joe, he was probably at least as good as me at doing a podcast. And yet, despite his wealth of knowledge, I never met anyone more humble, friendly, and open to trying new things. On that project alone, we did audio, video, and social media stuff that neither the DNC nor WXXI had ever done before, and he was game for all of it. He was down to try all of my ideas, the good and the awful, and let me learn so much from him along the way. I feel so grateful to have had the chance to work with you, Gary, and now that you're retired, let's do another podcast already.
Oh, I want to. Yeah, I'll get choked up here. Thank you, Veronica. That was very kind. And I don't recall any ideas of hers that were awful. But
well, I mean,
yes.
No, I kind of agree with you. Veronica's brilliant in her own right.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But I'm going to endorse what Veronica says. Gary's humility has made him so easy for other journalists to sometimes talk to, get to know. And you're not just saying that, you would do another podcast?
Oh, in a heartbeat, yeah.
Do you have a
as
subject
long as
in mind?
As long as it's with Veronica. My apologies to anybody else, but yeah.
Well,
we
listen,
had one we were looking
happy,
at.
WX6I, to have Veronica, and we're happy to have you in your retirement come out of retirement immediately.
Well, not
You're
immediately.
Terrible at retirement.
Not immediately.
You're really not good at
no,
retirement.
I'm very bad at it already. So it's so funny though. Just come back to. This is it's been I've received a lot of nice comments this week, and I'm just overwhelmed and touched. But there's always something happens that makes sure that if you get a little too big, you get deflated. So just truly within the hour or two, I was at federal court. This is before I ruined my tie, and it was with some colleagues. I was sort of showing around federal court. We sat in on a hearing. And we come out, and there was a mother and her son. I don't know, maybe he's 11 or 12. He's a really bright kid, except for what he said, which I'll get to. And he looks at me, and he goes, "Do you know who you look like?" And this is not going to end well. I'm like, "No, who?" And he goes, "An older Donald Trump." And I'm like,
"Whoa!"
And I was like, "Okay, Trump." People can argue whether he's good looking, bad, somebody else will. But like, wait, an older Donald Trump?
You're younger than Donald.
Oh yes,
significantly,
like 13 years.
Significantly.
I was like, so okay, any ego that all these nice comments had built just pretty much went out the window with that one comment. So.
That was just this morning.
That was. Yeah.
How are you going to walk away from this wonderful job?
It'll be tough. I mean, I'm still going to be doing some stuff, writing and other stuff, but it's just sort of sorting it out.
We're going to get, before the end of the hour, we're going to really squeeze that out of him because the column hints at that. Yes. But Veronica also offered a few questions that she'd love to hear you talk about. So she writes, "I want to ask a few questions about how access has changed for journalists over the years." And Veronica says, "Gary, because you have this institutional knowledge of how the system works, but also you have these long-standing relationships with public officials, and we are in a time of dramatic change in terms of how public officials comport with the media nationally, but also that can play out locally. So first of all," she said, "you love documents and combing through documents. We know that access to documents that should be publicly available is getting worse across the country. Does that play out for you here in Rochester? Has it gotten harder for you?"
Oh, yes. No, it clearly has. I was thinking this morning about some stories we did years ago. I think it was probably during Maggie Brooks' administration, and to credit her administration with the openness with they had documents. We did a couple of stories, like 2 days worth of stories on how kids who are in the foster care system that, basically publicly funded part of the foster care system, the percentage in Monroe County of psychotropic, sort of antipsychotic meds they were getting significantly was more than like other similar counties, Onondaga, Erie. And I was remembering it when we did those stories. They basically opened a pipeline for me for their folks in DSS that had this data at their fingertips, and I would call and say, whatever the med was, and can you get this for me, the age, where the facility, and they would send it to me. I would bet I'd be fighting for that for 6 months to a year now to probably get something like that. And I mean, no, I don't want to say the county. Maybe the county would open it up. I don't know, but it just seems harder now. Everything, the idea of the Freedom of Information Act on the federal side, law on the state side. You don't have to withhold it if it's public. You don't have to make people file FOILs if it's public. You can say, it's public, I'll give it to you. But now it's become sort of the fallback is always you got to file a Freedom of Information for it. And then you'll get the
And what you want to say to them is, we don't have to.
Exactly.
I mean, I will.
Yes.
But they ask you that. They tell you to do that because they know some people won't.
No, and it's the access both sort of kind of physically to get to folks. Like I mentioned, there's security issues now that you can't downplay versus when Tom Ryan was mayor. You can't underestimate those. But like the ability to like walk up to City Hall and knock on the mayor's top aide and say, "Hey, is the mayor in?" He'd stick his head in and the mayor say, "Yeah, come on in." It's hard. And I think, and the other part that's tough, and I've talked internally about this, is let's face it, I know the DNC has far fewer staff than when I started. Significantly fewer staff. Yeah. So part of getting access, and I don't want to make it sound like it's like transactional because I never looked at it that way, but if you're places where you talk to people that, later on you're going to need to talk to them again. And, it's just, and you get to know them and you're just chatting, and then you're talking news and you're talking family or whatever maybe. And it was easier when people could be, when we had enough staff that were at the school boards or at the town boards or at the city halls versus, now where it's really hard to physically be at those places. And I think the industry in itself can't be sort of eliminated when it comes back to issues with access, because I think that's part of it as well.
Veronica says there's a sense among people in the media that public officials don't, quote, need us anymore, including law enforcement agencies, because they have their own platforms to reach people. Do you think that's true?
Oh, yes. No, I think that's very true. I mean, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's, even you could argue maybe activists too. Social media, there's the good side of social media, which is, the reach it can give people now. And there's the bad side, which, basically so much is ideologically driven or have a take driven or let's inflame people driven instead of just, it's basically, the idea with news is you have facts and you build a narrative based on those facts. Now it's basically you shoehorn your ideological facts in that seem to fit the narrative you want to build. You look at this, this tragedy in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Within how long was it before both sides were on Twitter saying, he's a Democrat, he's a Republican, he's Antifa, he's whatever.
He was appointed by Tim Walz, so he must be a Democrat. He said this, so he must be an evil Republican.
Exactly. And it's like, come on, let's wait this thing out.
Yeah. Those details will come.
Yeah.
But there is a desire. I am almost unswayable in my view that what we thought would be a positive of something like Twitter, these kind of tools, has a net negative.
Oh, I'm with you now. I think it's sadly become sort of a cesspool. I think, and I'm still on it. I still use it, but I don't know why people just feel this need that everything they tweet, they feel has to be something that's going to either anger people or I don't know. I don't get it. It's a weird psychology to that.
Veronica says, do you think journalists bear any of the responsibility for the breakdown of trust between these two institutions, journalism and public office?
Oh, I think so. I really get concerned still at, probably every 5-6 years, something happens with anonymous sources that, we're going to be better about that. And and you look at the major, whether it's the Times, the Post, et cetera, which some of my favorite publications. There's anonymous sources for news, which I believe, if it's something you're trying to say, only way you're going to get it. But then there's this old sort of anonymous sources for like opinions and things like that. What's being said, it's like, the coffee house chatter in the White House or something.
I think that's a great dividing line.
Yeah.
Anonymous sources on news, tough, should be relatively rare, understandable.
Yeah.
But anonymous opinion slinging?
Yes.
If you won't put your name on it, then your opinion is not going to get published.
And I keep thinking, there's always something ends up, where somebody gets, something not tragic, but a newspaper or some media outlet ends up going off, getting derailed by anonymous sources. And then we're going to improve. We're going to do this. We're going to change our policies. It's like, it's never more than 2 years before we're right back where we were, I think.
And one more from Veronica. What advice do you have for younger journalists who are just coming up against walls, trying to get interviews or phone calls with people? What's the best thing they can do? Don't
give up. Just, you can be persistent and polite, I guess is, but let them know you're not going to go away. Call them at home. That's how, if you have to.
Well, they don't have landlines anymore, Gary.
Well, that's true. But you can still, with some work, sometimes get lucky and find a cell phone. Those are getting more common online now, or on LexisNexis. They're getting easier to find. But but it is tough. I feel lucky that because I know so many people, because I've been here so darn long, it's easier for me it's not like I'm starting anew right now. I think if I were starting fresh, it would be maddening, I think, to try to do it.
See, that reminds me, Gary, you're like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, where he says, maybe
it's better than old Donald Trump, so thank you.
He says, maybe God's not omniscient. Maybe he's just been around so long he knows everything.
I do love Groundhog Day. Yes.
We're losing a lot with your retirement on Friday. Let me grab a couple phone calls.
Sure.
This is Bob in Brighton. Hey, Bob, go ahead.
Hey, Evan, don't tell Gary I said this. I'm with you. He is the greatest journalist in Rochester. I came here in 1969. And as good as many of the best nationally. But I do want to ask Gary, what first led you to become involved with writing about Attica, and what about it involved you in an ongoing investigative reporting way for so many decades, and then finally, to continue leading to writing a book about what I call one of the children of Attica, like Dee or the daughter of John Edlin, the medical examiner.
It's great questions, Bob. Thank you. Go ahead, Gary.
It's so funny. Again, returning to federal court this morning, when I went to federal court, I had, and this is how it all started, I had the transcripts, YouTube can see this, about yay thick of the 2000 settlement hearings in front of Judge Teleska, which is what really, I was doing some federal court, and the Attica civil suit filed by the men who were incarcerated, and some were brutalized, and there were the deaths and all, lagged on from 1976. The uprising was 71. I think the suit maybe was 75, till a settlement in 2000, which the late Judge Teleska, a wonderful man here, was given the job of deciding how to divide the money that the state had agreed to give to the inmates. And so he had hearings. I mean, to his credit, he could have done it on the papers, but he had hearings all summer long with folks coming up on buses from New York City and all, hundreds of people. And I knew Judge Teleska, his staff would call me and they say, hey, this is going to be some interesting testimony today. And afterwards, he actually had printed out for me, it's probably thousands of dollars, the full transcript of the hearings. And this is the 125th anniversary of the Western District of New York federal court system. There's a lot of stuff going on. And I realized that I'm sure it's obviously the record is still there if they want to print it out, but I actually had a print, which I donated to them today. But that's how it started, was that. And I got to know Frank Big Black Smith, who sort of spearheaded the lawsuit and was wrongly suspected of abusing a guard. And I just got to know the people. I got to know Dee, who I co-wrote the book with, and there's everybody. Obviously there's what happened, the uprising itself with the 43 people dead, but there's just the aftermath where on all sides people were treated so horribly and just so inhumanely, whether it's the folks who were beaten, who are the inmates, whether it's the corrections officers and their family who basically got, cajoled into accepting workers' compensation, which precluded them from suing the state in the aftermath. And so it was this combination of absolutely wonderful people who had been done wrong, but just remarkable strength. Frank and Dee particularly, whom I got to, Frank we've lost sadly, and Dee and I are still close friends. But them as well as others, and just who were putting up this fight. Talk about persistence. They were not giving up. And I found them so inspiring. And that in, the story itself and all, why I've been writing about it continually on and off if there's something to write.
Bob, thank you for highlighting that. That's Gary has done so much in his career, but I'm glad we're not going to leave out that particular book. Gary's authored the book that he wrote on his own, 7 Million, when he first came on this program, didn't even remember the name.
I am not very good at marketing.
Didn't even remember the name of his book first time he was on to talk about it.
Well, I remembered the first two words. There's a lot after the colon.
Yes.
That was that's a lot too much
He's
to remember.
on the air going, I know it's called 7 Million, and then the subtitle, is it this or is it that? I'm going, it's your book.
Yeah, I know. That was
but he co-authored The Prison Guard's Daughter, and a great way to honor his work in his coming retirement is pick up those books if you haven't picked them up already. They are going to be read for a long, long time in our region. If you're waiting on the phone or if you've sent emails, I'm going to get to more. I am late for a break. I've got to get this only break in. We're coming back with the great Gary Craig, who is retiring from the Democrat and Chronicle on Friday.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bob Johnson Auto Group, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson. Believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.
Public media is at risk. Please join WXXI's Chris Hastings for a virtual town hall Tuesday night at 6. It will be an online discussion about WXXI's mission, the impact we have in the community, and the fight to save federal funding. That's Tuesday night at 6. To learn more and register for the event, visit us now at WXXI.org.
Gary Craig, this is your life.
Oh, my God.
If you're not watching on YouTube, Gary is responding to some of his colleagues, Brian Sharp, Max Schulte, joining us in the studio here.
Oh, now I'm really scared.
I told Gary during the break, that's it. That's all I got. I hope there's someone who could talk about him. Well, it turns out this is your life, Gary Craig. And they are here to talk a little bit about having worked with you over the years. Hi, guys. Welcome.
Hello.
Grab your microphones. There you go. I had to tell Brian the same thing as Gary. I'm like, will you get close to your microphone, you print people? Gary Craig is retiring on Friday. And Brian Sharp, what's your first memory of working with Gary Craig? What stands out to you most from working with him?
We were talking actually last night, and I'm trying to remember. I think he was on the group that I interviewed with when I came here. But I think some of, and Veronica touched on this, was my first beat here was City Hall. And I remember sitting in Vince Carfagna's office.
Vince.
But Gary was always just, to call him a resource was like, I was listening to you talk about other stuff, and it's not just that he is helpful and willing and humble, but also, your grasp and memory of things is staggering.
That's fading, trust me.
Yes. But, and that was the thing, coming in at a time when Mayor Johnson was wrapping up, and it just sort of seemed like, we had a number of folks over in the DNC newsroom, Steve Orr, Ziegler, we were just talking about last night. And, you felt like you were walking into just an entire encyclopedia, living encyclopedia of people who could just fill you in on everything. But my other memory, because I was trying to think of stories and such, was I got to sit next to Gary. So I got to watch how he put together his stories. I got to listen to his interviews, which I've said was like going back to school in a way, because they don't really teach you how to interview. And I think just how genuine he is, and I think that's come through of his, which I think transfers over to his absolute and honest, I think, joy and appreciation of people. But he was talking to somebody, and I was, you just sort of start listening, and you'd get distracted by what you were doing. And he was talking to the mother of a serial killer. And I'm like, why would they, because people inherently sort of, even though I think, journalists have very genuine, trustworthy people, but Gary just, I think, has that ability to put people at a degree of ease. And so, yeah, I'm sitting there and he's like, oh, it's just another day. It's a Tuesday. And he's, getting folks to talk to him and trust in him in ways that a lot of people won't.
Has it made you a better reporter?
I hope so. I think I've said after my time at the DNC that I think I became I think I came in there maybe as a better writer than reporter and left as a better reporter than writer. So, but Gary can do both.
Well,
you can too, so don't, yeah.
No, I mean,
yes.
Brian is one of the great ones, and
yes.
we're lucky to have him at WXXI. I want to just echo some of what Brian is saying on 2 points. First of all, it is remarkably challenging as a young journalist coming into, or as a journalist going into any newsroom, especially in a new place or a new state. And that was me in 2003. And I was in television where, different job. But, I mean, someone like Jane Flash was very generous with her actual Rolodex, a real Rolodex, and kind and generous. And, Gary was that way even with people who weren't at the Democrat and Chronicle. I'm not saying you'd give away all your sources. I mean, we got to have limits,
yes,
right, Gary?
There is, yeah, definitely.
But how kind you were to journalists around you. What Brian's talking about is an ability to talk to people in the hardest circumstances, an ability to see humanity, and an ability not to judge. You wrote in your piece about curiosity, that you are someone with natural curiosity. Can you elaborate a little bit more on why you feel like, having done the work you've done, the career you've had, you don't feel imbued with certainty? You're still curious about everyone's ideas, opinions, experiences.
Oh, yeah. Maybe certainty is something I seem to have very little of. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's just is it do you develop it? Are you born with? I just can't imagine not having it. I mean, going back to those GAO books. I mean, who wants to read about the latest transportation from GAO? But I did.
You're curious enough to do it.
It is, and it just I'm that way, and it's both a blessing and a curse because there's always more to know, and the realization how little you do know when you're looking. But it's a blessing if you're trying to do this job where you just keep digging and digging and digging. But yeah, everything intrigues me. I mean, it doesn't. I don't really have sort of a myopic view of anything. I'm just like that's the New Yorker magazine. That's why I always love it because I never know what I'm going to get, but I'm going to love it. And it's just the curiosity never seems to wane.
You're finally going to have time to read that stack of New Yorkers.
Yes.
That's Paula.
I can't wait.
I've long thought the New Yorker is published just to make curious people envious of not having enough time to actually read it.
You're right on. It makes me nuts.
Well, Gary's going to be retiring on Friday. And also to Brian's point about interviewing people like a serial killer's mother. Was a serial killer's mother?
Yeah, I think I know who that was.
I mean,
because if there were more than one. But
well, I mean, you probably remember many. Were there any conversations that either stay with you for any particular reason, lighter or darker reasons over the years?
Christmas.
Max knew where I was going. It may have been his mother.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys know something I don't know. What's the story?
Well, Bruce Spahalski, the guy that went to prison here for killing 3 people and probably did some more, had a twin brother, identical twin, in prison for a murder himself. And Max, one of the many, Max and I did a lot of stuff together. We went to Attica to interview Christmas, which was his nickname because that was his favorite season. And his letters he wrote me were very intriguing. And going back to corrections officers, I'm talking about but sort of the older, seasoned corrections officers. I think if somebody's not causing trouble, they just kind of let the individual be who they want to be. And the guy that was taking us back to see Christmas, Steven Spahalski, just basically described Steven as a guy keeps to himself, doesn't cause any trouble. We don't really worry about him. We sit down. That's one of the best. I love that photo Max got at Christmas. We sit down, and it was a large. Sometimes you're really shoehorned into a room for an interview with a prisoner, but it was a large room. It was like I was across the table from Christmas, closer than Brian, and within minutes he's talking to his victim from whatever 30 plus years, maybe the victim, via the computers, which they don't have at Attica then, by the way, via the computers. The colors of the signs at Attica are the same color of the coat of his murder victim, and that's on purpose. And you could see the CO or the corrections officer in the corner going, wait a minute, this isn't the guy I thought he was. And it just kept going from there. It got fairly psychotic. And
Attica isn't a cushy prison.
Exactly.
Attica is prison.
Yeah. That was
the
probably
room we were in. We weren't getting out of
the stereotypical prison.
Yeah. It was. I could just see the CO looking like this is not what I was expecting, and that's funny because that came right to mind when you talked about strange interviews, and that I mean that was one of them.
Max, what comes to mind first when you think about Gary's career?
Well, Gary and I spent countless hours together. So the investigative reporting that Gary did was something that I really looked forward to as a photojournalist because not only were we getting access to the real story, or Gary got us access to the real story, we were getting access to storytelling, in-depth investigative storytelling that nobody else really knows how to do. So Gary's work was a lesson for me, a privilege for me to witness, to be alongside of him and witness his ability to connect very quickly with people, whether it was a young 20-something-year-old heroin addict who had just been brought into an intake facility, or a federal judge who was been printing them out docs for decades. Yeah. I mean, how do you measure a person by how successful they are? It's the relationships they've built that got them the access to tell this community stories. And Gary didn't do it with a bait and switch or a magic wand. Gary just did it because he's Gary Craig. But
You guys are too much. Thank you.
I can tell you that my favorite story about Gary, or one of our, oh geez, okay, now I got a couple coming to my mind. I mean,
I'm really curious.
the most impressive, outside of the Christmas in the prison room, that was kind of odd, was when Gary was working on the Brinks heist investigative piece, and we got access to just about everything. And for a long time, if you know the story of the Brinks heist, there was a character in there called Ronnie Gibbons. Well, nobody knew where Ronnie was for quite some time, and it was a big mystery. Where was Ronnie?
Yeah.
Well, we got to stand next to an unmarked grave and watch them dig up a coffin with remains in it, and we found Ronnie.
Yeah, we were there. Max was doing the video. We were there up at the Thousand Islands together.
Yeah.
That was a crazy trip.
There's a couple more. We could go on, but Gary's ability to build relationships and then know where he needed to be. That wasn't something you were just gonna. A good journalist knows they need to be graveside for that. You're not making a phone call to understand what's going on. You're going, and you're going to witness it, and that's what Gary's been doing forever.
What an amazing endorsement there.
Yeah, I think you guys are killing me here. Thank you.
No, thank you, man. Thank you. I learned a lot from you, honestly. Privilege.
We should probably bring in one more.
Oh, geez.
Just one more. Gary Craig, this is your life. Gary Craig, retiring on Friday. Do you recognize this voice, Gary
gosh.
Craig? Actually, you cannot possibly miss it. Caller, what's your favorite Gary Craig story?
I'm here for the roast. Is this the right place?
Yes, please, go for it.
Justin Murphy, former Democrat and Chronicle
Hey, Justin.
education reporter. It should be a roast. Gary would be more comfortable if it were a roast. This is very uncomfortable for him. Can you say something demeaning about Gary and lighten the load a little bit here?
You look like an old Donald Trump. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks.
Well, no, I can't.
Okay. Good try. Can you say something nice
Well,
about it?
I can actually. Gary has, for as long as I've known him, Gary has gone to work every day almost every day at Starbucks, and he doesn't drink coffee. And he perches on an uncomfortable stool and drinks iced tea at Starbucks, and it doesn't make a damn lick of sense.
There are so many people that think I'm a barista because I say I'm going to work at Starbucks, and they see me every morning. I think, are you a barista at Starbucks?
Are you the only journalist who doesn't drink coffee?
I may be. Yeah, I've just never developed a taste for it.
Imagine the good work that Gary could have done if he had a proper monitor and coffee like the rest of us.
And proper chair, comfy chair.
Yeah.
You don't want to get too comfortable. Yeah.
A proper monitor. What's going on there, Justin?
So the story that I worked on the most with Gary that I really remember is after Daniel Prude, when the Attorney General was investigating the death and the way that he'd been held down, and she found an expert who had a 100 out of 100 track record of finding that police had done no wrong in restraining people the way that they restrained Daniel Prude. So that was a pretty good story for Gary and I, and it was a hot one in that the Tish James PR team was extremely motivated to not have that sort of story make any kind of waves for her. And I learned so much from Gary during that period, making sure that everything is buttoned up and questioning our assumptions, not only for the purpose of ensuring that we didn't make an error, but ensuring that we approached the story in a fair way, that we considered everything that we had to do along the way. And it ended up being a much, much better story than I could have done on my own for having done it with Gary.
That was a huge story. I remember that very well. And Gary, what do you remember about that?
Well, similarly, I remember the great work Justin did. I'm not just saying that. I mean, he really did. He's the one I think that sort of originally sort of had the foundation of the story, and he's right. The public relations office, the media office, was definitely trying to downplay the story or shoot down the story. But that expert, and the same expert had been used in taser cases and other things in the country, and it started. It's interesting too because it was. Ultimately the grand jury minutes became public with that case, which is really unusual. But it was just trying to piece together sort of what had happened with the grand jury. The case had been presented was pretty tough because as a grand jury, it's secretive, and everybody's sort of seemed to have some politics behind it. I don't want to say necessarily, but you couldn't sort of separate the politics from everything.
Justin, you have left journalism. You're doing work that is kind of adjacent. I mean, for an organization that's doing a lot of important work in the community. But, with Gary's retirement, I say this all the time. I mean, I want people to support WXXI. I want people to support their local print. I'm very concerned about it. Does this retirement does this feel different to you, Justin? I mean, I can tell you a lot of our colleagues have said over the years, but when Gary goes, we're in real trouble. And I wonder how you feel, Justin.
It does. And the first thing I want to say, and I have not been able to listen this hour, but I'm sure Gary has already said this, is that there remain a number of extremely talented and dedicated reporters, specifically at the DNC. Some of them people who have been there for a long time, like Victoria Fraley, Marsha Greenwood, the sports guys, the photographers, and also some younger reporters who don't have that long track record but are dedicated and talented and hungry to tell truthful stories, just like Gary was and I was and you were when we were all much younger people. But that being said, I think it's been the case in the last, maybe 10 years or so, maybe longer, that traditional media, and in particular the DNC, has decreased its investment in certain kinds of foundational news, and yet still been able to kind of work off the equity that had built up over the years in training and the fact that it used to do those. So, like, for example, the DNC for at least 10 years has not cared at all about judge races, judicial elections. They have not asked Gary to do anything. They have not expected anything. And yet he has written the only public information that exists in our community about judicial elections because he used to, and he thinks it's important, and he knows how to do it, and he knows that nobody else is going to do it. I think that there are a lot of things like that where people like Gary, like Steve Orr, like Patty Singer, like Megan McDermott had been around forever and were doing stuff just basically out of habit and cussedness. And it's not going to get done anymore, not because the remaining journalists aren't capable of it or don't want to do it, but because they're not incentivized to do it and because they don't have a long history of doing it. So in that sense, Gary leaving, I think, is really very significant.
Justin, thank you for making time.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks for popping in. I know we'll see you soon. We appreciate it.
Always. See you soon, Gary.
Okay.
Justin Murphy,
Starbucks
Brian
tea.
Sharp, Starbucks tea, Max Schulte. Before we let these guys go, this is going to be nice. We've got a local political figure. Mark Johns is on the line. We're going to get Mark, but it's a good indication. I don't think he's calling to complain. I don't know. Maybe he is actually. Mark Johns, this is your chance to tell Gary all the ways that he has wronged you.
Oh, he never has. He's a great guy. But no, I was just going to, put my 2 cents in, not about any of you guys, but in general, there isn't a lot of investigative reporting going on. And I really believe it's because of the big money. If you're a nonprofit or whatever it is that you're doing, you get money from government or money from the politicians bringing in the big checks, which is, by the way, your tax dollars, not theirs. But the fact is they don't want to rock the boat. And I'm talking about, reporters or other people who are doing investigations. Cheryl Atkinson, that Full Measure show on Sundays, they do some investigating. 60 Minutes does some. But it used to be the media didn't investigate the auto dealers because the auto dealers spent so much money advertising in the media. And if you take a look at what goes on, whether it's Mitch McConnell or Chuck Schumer, there's a reason why they don't tax the rich guys on Wall Street as much as like the hedge fund guys. They don't get taxed as much because they're big campaign donors. And that's right out there in public, right? Mitch McConnell, there was a woman from CNN that many years ago asked her, well, Senator McConnell, what about all this big money? Isn't it corrupting? And he says, oh, no, it's not corrupting. It's perfectly legal. Well, that's exactly what the problem is. I complain not about all the sleazy stuff goes on with the nonprofits. Look at what your state legislators get paid for part-time work.
I just got to jump in, Mark, because we're going to lose the hour. But I want to say that I think the point is well taken.
Yes, thank you.
I also wish you were calling to complain about Gary because somebody had to this hour. But although Gary will tell you, you don't want politicians to be too comfortable with your work.
No, I would get concerned. Yes,
if everyone was.
I would get concerned.
And WXXI does some investigative reporting.
Oh, very much.
Well, I think one thing, particularly that's been highlighted here, is it takes time. It also takes experience to get beyond the surface level things. You got to know where to look. You got to know how to get there. I always talk about it. You got to know not just the front door, but the side door and the back door, and all the ways to do that. That takes time. That takes experience. It does take investment, and I think that's another thing where you got the years that Gary has doing this work, the connections that he has. That's a big loss.
Gary also knew where the back window was left open.
Yes.
He knew everywhere to get into that building.
He literally knows where the bodies are buried.
The actual bodies.
Yeah.
And Gary, it says there that you might be writing some more in the future, too.
Yeah.
More books?
I've got some books planned. Some freelancing. I've got a lot of ideas, but we'll see. While still enjoying retirement, so yes.
I hate to tell you this, but you kind of committed to doing a new podcast with Veronica
Yeah,
Volk.
I think hey, I've told Veronica I'm in, so yeah.
That's on the record.
Yes, we're there.
Your colleagues have wanted to be here because we so much appreciate what you have done
very
for
touched.
this community.
Yeah.
Every person who has worked alongside you is better because of it. Thank you, Gary Craig.
Thank you, guys. I'm honored and touched. I appreciate it. Thanks.
We'll see you at the Jazz Festival.
Yes, you will.
He's got a lot of work to do. He's going back to work. He's got a lot more to do at the Democrat and Chronicle. Friday is his retirement day. That's Gary Craig. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We're back with you tomorrow on member-supported public media.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.